Welcome to Salute Your Sports Week 34. Common Enchev, Drew Brackett, Tom Castleman. Guys, we normally record at night, but an early morning show this week for this night owl and a big show. A college basketball coaching legend will step down, NBA playoff talk, and much, much more.
Yeah, definitely going to be an exciting show on the docket for us today. Doing a little bit of NBA recap on the first round of the playoffs so far, but definitely have some big games coming up, even in just the first round. Some potential interesting storylines to talk about as well.
Yeah, well, we'll kick it off. The Lakers in the West down 3-2 versus the Suns. Common, they coming back, or is LeBron out for the first time in his career in the first round?
Ooh, boy, this is tough. Of course, it depends also on Anthony Davis. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? How healthy is he going to be? But for me, I kind of said this in our preview to this series. I said this series could go either way, but if the Suns are more likely to win it, they're going to win it in the first 5 games. And the Lakers, the deeper it goes into the series, the better LeBron James will play, is what I was thinking. And I'm still thinking that. I mean, LeBron James is deadly in game 6 and 7. 15-6, his teams are in game sixes. 6-4 when his team is down 3-2. LeBron James teams have won 11 of the past 12 playoff series that reached game 6. And if you think he's good in game 6, well, game 7 is a whole different story, averaging 34.9 points, 9.9 rebounds, 5.4 assists in game 7, shooting just under 49%. His team 6-2 in those game 7s. The 2 losses were the first 2 years he played in game 7 with that weak Cleveland team back in the day. So I think LeBron James is going to rise up. I think LeBron James is going to show up. I think DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, they don't have that playoff experience. So I like the Lakers to come back and win this series. Absolutely.
Yeah, Common, you mentioned a lot of numbers for LeBron James over a lot of years, and I think that's kind of the key difference in what we're watching in this series is that we're not seeing the LeBron James of old. We are seeing LeBron James who is old, and he still has a great deal of talent in him, but I don't know if it's necessarily. I'm not looking to bury the Lakers by no stretch of the imagination, but I think this might kind of be this sort of transitioning time in LeBron's career where we see him not be able to come up and make that big difference. Of course, Anthony Davis is going to be huge. It was a 30-point loss to the Phoenix, granted in Phoenix without Anthony Davis, but how much is home court really worth? I think that LA is definitely still a big threat, but I don't think that we can just count on LeBron James to kind of come back in game 6 and 7 the way he did in the finals with Cleveland, where he and Kyrie both put up 40-plus points. I don't know who LeBron's running mate's going to be if they're going to mount a comeback against the Suns and Anthony Davis is still injured.
Yeah, they'll have to figure it out here. They're only 2-point favorites on at home for tonight's game on Thursday night. So we'll see what happens. But I think the Suns will end up winning the series.
Yeah, look out for that -2 line in locks of the week later in the show. By the way, yeah, I mean it's going to be close. Certainly, I think Chris Paul got a little banged up. I don't know how serious that was, but he's also playing through some injuries. Don't forget about that. And Tom, we'll see. You could be right. LeBron James certainly hasn't looked at his absolute best this series, but he also shot the 3-ball really good at the end of game 6. I know they lost big. But that's something for fans to look out on. If LeBron James is shooting his 3-ball really well, that opens up the field for everything else. And what's interesting about the Lakers is he doesn't have a true number 2, but they do have a lot of capable role players. So if they get a few of them to show up on the same night, they have a chance. I mean, certainly Cameron Payne isn't going to be dominating as much as he did last time out against the Suns. That was crazy. So looking forward to watching that tonight. Looking forward to seeing who's right. I did say this on our show. I felt that whoever won the Lakers-Suns series is going to represent the Western Conference. Those two are the top 2 teams in the West for me, for sure.
I think last time we picked on this show, I flip-flopped, so I have no clue who I picked. But we'll move on to the Mavs and the Clippers series. Mavs are up 3-2. Common second favorite series in the West. Common, who you got winning this one?
Oh, definitely sticking with my pick in Dallas. I was all aboard the Dallas train before the series started. I was hating on the Clippers. You guys know this. The Clippers are arguably the sports franchise I dislike the most in sports right now because of all the resting and all the tanking they do. And it shows these guys are not ready to deliver in crunch time. And we talk about these great defensive players in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Well, maybe they're not quite as good as we thought they were because they certainly haven't stopped Luka Doncic. 42 points and 14 assists last night. He's averaging 35 points, 9.4 assists, 8 rebounds in this series. And what's crazy for Dallas is they're up 3-2 in this series. They've won all 3 road games, which has been a wild series, the road team winning every game. And Kristaps Porzingis, their second best player, their big guy, I mean, granted, he shoots a lot from the outside, but 14 points and 4 rebounds in this series. I mean, he's playing about as bad as he can for his talent. So if he shows up, the Clippers could be done in Game 6. And if it goes to 7, I still like Dallas. I just don't see the Clippers stopping Doncic 2 games in a row. And I think Kristaps Porzingis shows up in one of these games.
Yeah, Dallas certainly does have the road advantage on this one, road court advantage. I'm not ready to bury the Clippers either. I'm leaning towards Dallas to win the series, but I mean, we've seen great individual performance out of LA's top 2 stars with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Both have been putting on really, really nice series. It's just when you have, like in Game 5, Reggie Jackson taking 15 shots, that's not ideal. The Clippers don't have a great supporting cast. So I'm seeing kind of as a common theme in the series is that if Luka Doncic goes off and has an oh my gosh, Twitter is on fire type of game, Mavericks are going to win. But when he has a really good game or a pretty good game, LA has the better overall talents. LA is going to hold road court for Game 6. I feel pretty good about them winning that one. We'll see what happens in Game 7. I think it's going to be a fantastic series to go down to the wire. I'm kind of waffling. I'm a little bit 50-50 on Mavericks Clippers. Mavericks have the obvious advantage given that they have 3 games in their pocket right now, but I mean I can't count LA either. I mean they're both really, really talented teams capable of closing this one out.
Yeah, give me the Clippers. They're 3-point favorites in Game 6. They'll be favored by probably, if they win Game 6, shoot, they're probably favored by 8 at home against the Mavs. I know Vegas has been really taking a liking to the Clippers.
I don't get it.
Well, I tend to side with Vegas on things. So
they've got the big names. They've got the big names in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Better like two-way talent players than say Luka Doncic, who's phenomenal on offense, but on defense is a little bit of a liability.
I mean, Tim Hardaway Jr. is playing out of his mind. I don't know. This guy's good, but he's not this good, is he?
He's playing like his dad used to play with the Miami Heat hitting those 3-pointers. I'll say this, Tom, 2-way players, but I talked about this last week. In the NBA, great offense beats great defense, as we've seen with Doncic. I think Doncic is more capable of playmaking for his teammates. He's also really crafty. He's not necessarily extremely athletic for an NBA player, but he has more ways to score. I think Leonard and George are more outside shooters, and if their shot isn't falling, they're not there. Luka has a way of sort of making those crafty layups, those crafty moves. So I think that Luka is hands down the top player in the series. You could talk about 2-way whatever you want, but I mean the guy, they're wing players, and he's dropping 35 a game on these guys, shooting nearly 50%. The only thing he is not doing well is making free throws. He gets a couple of those to go down. Things could be even different. But I mean, it could go either way. LA Clippers do have talent, but I've been hating on the Clippers all year long, loving on Luka Doncic. So why change now? Tom's flipping a little bit. Flips here.
I'll stick with the Clippers. Clippers. Kawhi Leonard was 1 for 7 beyond the arc in the last game. That sort of thing's not going to happen twice. If he hits just a couple more of those, I mean, we're talking about a great Luka performance that's gone to waste. So I'll stick with the original pick. It's closer than I thought it was going to be, though.
Look for Zingis to zing them one of these games. Porzingis is going to zing the Clippers. Keep that in mind.
Nah, poor is going to just become poorer. and
Okay.
not accumulate a playoff series win.
You should get
Moving
some
on,
corn out here with our corny jokes. I love
Oh
it.
boy, we better move on. Trailblazers Nuggets. Denver leads the series 3-2 in a wild game Tuesday night. I actually watched some of that game. 147 to 140 finish. Dame Lillard, 55 points, 6 boards, 10 assists. What a performance from him. Common, what do you think? Is it enough, or are the Nuggets going to win this series?
So this is a series I thought was the hardest to pick from the start. By the way, Lillard, 55 points, tied for the 7th most ever in a playoff game, but he did it efficiently. 17 of 24 from the field, 12 of 17 on threes, 9 of 10 on free throws, breaking Klay Thompson's record of 11 threes in the playoffs, hitting 12. I remember that memorable Game 6 against the Thunder for Klay Thompson, at the time saving the Warriors season, only to lose to LeBron James in the finals. This is hard. I mean, these are kind of the 3 series we talked about in the West that we thought were the 3 toughest series to pick: Mavs, Clippers, Nuggets, Blazers, Lakers, Suns. And this one might be the toughest of the bunch. I think these 2 teams are very evenly matched. I talked about this. Lillard and McCollum, certainly Blazers have the edge on the guards, but Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., the edge in the forward center position. For me, I think it's 50-50, but for the sake of making a pick, I'm going to go with Tom Castleman's Blazers. Just because Austin Rivers has emerged for Denver. He's playing out of his mind in this series in the games they win. 21 points and 18 points in Denver's last 2 wins in this series. I don't know that we're going to see that type of consistency from Austin Rivers. Meanwhile, Lillard, we could see Lillard being hot. We can see Jokic being hot, but McCollum had a bad game last time out. I think McCollum's going to play much better in this next game than Austin Rivers, certainly in my opinion, and that might make the difference. I think this is going to go to 7. These 2 teams are too close for it not to go to 7. They say in Game 7, anything can happen. Certainly Jokic, probably more consistent than Lillard, given with his post play, but I have a feeling that Dame Dollar, Dame Time, as Tom Castleman likes to say, it's going to come through in the clutch in Game 6 and Game 7. Blazers come back and steal this series on the road. I will say if Jamal Murray was there, I would have picked the Nuggets, but Jamal Murray not being there finally comes back to bite Denver.
Yeah, as much as it pains me to say it, I'm going to stick with who I picked before the series started, the Denver Nuggets. It's pretty much looked the way I kind of thought that it would, where it's a lot of Damian Lillard, and if he doesn't have a whole lot of help, we're going to have great performances like the one we had in that 55-point game, and it just goes to waste because, who else is he running with? We're looking at a pretty close series with the Denver Nuggets team that's down their second best player. I mean, this is kind of, looking bigger picture at the Portland Trailblazers. I don't know how they do it, but they have to find some way to get him a better second player to run alongside him. CJ McCollum is really, really good, but there's a clear difference, in the level of tier 2 players or second fiddle players, second bananas, whatever you want to call them. It's clear that Damian Lillard doesn't have as much around him as some of these other stars in the playoffs. And it's a shame because he's a really exciting player who I want to see go further into the playoffs, go deeper into the postseason. And I just don't think we're going to have it. I think we're going to have the Denver Nuggets probably in Game 7 winning this one. I think the Blazers can definitely take one at home. But yeah, give me the Nuggets to come out.
Yeah, I'll take the Nuggets as well to win the series in 7. Portland favored by 5, so you have to think they'll follow suit at home. But then in Game 7, give me the Nuggets to win that series. Well, looking at the West matchup that finished up, Jazz and Grizzlies. Jazz win 4-1. They stumbled out of the gate. They're fine though. They move on. And then in the East, feel free to give a recap of what you won in the East.
Yeah, so first off, real quickly, in that Nuggets Blazers, look for a vintage Carmelo Anthony performance one of these games against Denver.
Your favorite.
I'm actually warming up on Carmelo over the years, which is funny to think about. But as far
probably
as
one of the top 5 greatest scorers of all time, maybe top 2.
Yeah, definitely not. I would not go anywhere close to that far. But as far as the other West series, yeah, the Jazz winning the last 4 games. Donovan Mitchell coming back, averaging 28.5 points per game in that series. They seem to be back on track. Mike Conley, though, did get hurt, their second option. So injury news on him is certainly going to be really big in the next series against the Mavs or Clippers, depending on how healthy Conley is, who's getting about 20-10 in this last series, should decide who wins that series. As far as the East, things went according to plan with the Nets and 76ers. I think the Nets are the best team in the league. We've kind of talked about this on the show a lot. Their talent winning out in 5 games there. Boston, by the way, Danny Ainge stepping down. Brad Stevens is going to take over management there, step down from the head coaching role. That'll be good to see. And then the other series, the Hawks got swept by the Knicks in the regular season, but all of a sudden they won in 5 games against New York. They held Julius Randle to a 29% shooting. They played physical, beat the Knicks with good defense. They kind of beat the Knicks at their own game. Trae Young averaging 29 points and 10 assists in the series, only 3 turnovers. The Hawks winning that series, not surprising how easily they won it, a little bit surprising. And given that Joel Embiid, they're saying, isn't a serious injury, but he did miss game 5 for the 76ers. We've seen so many injuries with him. If Joel Embiid isn't healthy or doesn't play, the Hawks have a chance in that series. If Embiid is healthy, for sure the Sixers should roll. And then the other series, Nets, Bucks, is going to be really good because the Bucks just swept the Miami Heat, and they won 2 out of 3 against the Nets in the regular season. All 3 of those games decided by 2 points or less, by the way. So that Nets-Bucks series could be maybe a little bit more competitive than we thought, given how well the Bucks are playing. So certainly looking forward to that. I would still pick Nets, Sixers, Eastern Conference Finals, but should be fun.
Yeah, the Utah Jazz looked a little smart actually for sitting Donovan Mitchell game 1. Weren't able to pull out the win, but then he came back better rested, better healthy than he did. Than he otherwise maybe could have been, and definitely rolled over the Memphis Grizzlies. They're looking like the team that we've seen all regular season, which is an encouraging start. Granted, it's just Memphis, but the Jazz moving on in the fashion in which they did. And then they get to look at the winner of this, slog fest between the Clippers and the Mavericks. So that'll be a fun series coming up no matter what. And it's just, speaking to like the broader picture in the NBA playoffs, it's just a shame with all the injuries that we have. We have Joel Embiid missing a game and is day to day. Anthony Davis day to day. We talked about Donovan Mitchell missing early playoffs, and now Mike Conley. It's just, I wish we could see all of these teams at full strength because that would be the most compelling thing. And unfortunately, we're reduced to, hey, maybe the Lakers are going to be bounced out, and LeBron James is done in the first round for the first time in his career because the second best player on his team and arguably one of the, probably like a top 10 player in the league. I don't know necessarily top 5 with the way the rest of the leagues played this year, but, important players are out. So it's a shame that it's a little bit of like the undercurrent to all these different great stories that we have, especially when we have great teams like, the Hawks. It's a great story from where they were to where they are now.
Yeah, it's exciting. I don't know how much of it has to do with the fact that we've had this whole COVID pandemic. Some guys resting longer, other teams coming back sooner than last year in the playoffs. It seems like it's one of those weird seasons. And I think after this season, I think most sports leagues and teams are going to sort of get back on track. And I think next year we should see things more like the way we used to, hopefully. Never like to see injuries for sure.
Yeah, and a quick note on that Nets-Bucks series: we should not say as a show that we might see it closer than we thought. Drew picked the Bucks to win this one, so as a show, this series has been a lot closer than we collectively thought.
Correct. It might be a little bit closer than I thought. Drew Brackett certainly looking a little bit smarter with his Bucks pick, but I would not pick the Bucks though. Still.
Yeah, we'll see how our friends in the desert size up this one. I think it'll be really interesting. Obviously, Nets will be favored in game 1 at home, in game 2 also likely at home, but by how much? Bucks, will they be favored at home? I have no idea, so we'll have to kind of speculate on that at a later time. But some big news in the college hoops game. Coach K will be retiring after this season. Huge news that came down yesterday. Common, is he one of the best ever to coach? Is he the best ever?
Yeah, the question is he the best ever? Because he's obviously one of the best ever. He does have the most wins in college basketball coaching history with 1,170 wins. His 5 national titles are the second most. John Wooden has 10 national titles. Coach K been around longer than John Wooden. Definitely has helped him get more wins. It's probably between those two. I mean, I think it's very hard to argue with John Wooden's 10 national titles, his pyramid of success. I would probably put John Wooden number one, but to me, Coach K has to be a close second. Definitely in that discussion because you kind of look at what he did. He kind of single-handedly put Duke on the map. He made him into a blue blood. Before Coach came there, they were not a laughing stock. They had made some tournament appearances. I believe they made a couple Final Fours, but they never, ever, ever won the national championship until Coach K came along. They were not that same powerhouse that was mentioned with the UCLA, the Kansas, the UNC. So what he did with that program is certainly transformational. Coach K is a true legend, and it's kind of crazy to think Roy Williams, one of the legends, just stepped down for UNC a couple months ago. Now Coach K follows suit. And then we had Jim Calhoun a couple years back. I'm sure Jim Boeheim is probably going to retire sometime soon. Seeing a lot of these coaching legends go, it's kind of sad, but also really cool to have seen those guys coach for such a long time.
Absolutely. And I think I can make a pretty clear line for Coach K is the best of a modern era. We have to keep in mind that coaching has changed a ton from John Wooden to Coach K. I mean, with John Wooden, you had, Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, arguably the greatest player of all time. He's up in that top 3 conversation. Had him for, 3-4 years on campus, had him for a full collegiate career. We've seen Coach K go kind of from the more traditional collegiate model of players sticking around for, sophomore, junior, senior years, and watched him transition over to a little bit of one and done, winning a title as recently as with, I don't remember the year, but that was Jahlil Okafor and Tyus Jones, I want to say. Justice Winslow as well. So he kind of showed that he could change with the times, which is the most important quality for any coach to have. I mean, Duke also has quite a few, as I'm sure many people were glad to see, a couple of duds in the first rounds, losing to Lehigh, 2-15 seed.
CJ McCollum.
Exactly. But I think we can definitely say, Wooden, greatest coach of his era, Coach K, greatest coach of his era.
Yeah, and Tom, if you coach as long as Coach K has, you are going to have a couple duds at some point.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and I think the going away tour coming up this season will be really interesting. Every game will be on ESPN, so we'll be able to watch those, and should be quite the exciting year for that Duke program. And of course, reports say Jon Scheyer replacement, so we could have a Hubert Davis for the Heels and then Jon Scheyer for Duke. That'd be really interesting. 2 former players that Scheyer, I mean, we watched in college. I think we might be older than him. I'm not sure how old he is, but he's probably right in the late 20s, early 30s time. But Scheyer was always fun to watch.
Yeah, Jon Scheyer was actually a legend in Illinois local high school basketball. Mm-hmm. He had something where he scored, I can't remember what it was, like 25 points in like 2 or 3 minutes. Just don't quote me on that, but look it up. He was quite the player. He won the national championship with Duke. Actually, he was in that game against Butler, the one that Tom likes to reference. Gordon Hayward nearly made 3 from beyond half court off the glass. Jon Scheyer played in that game with Kyle Singler and Duke winning the tournament. A little different situation than Hubert Davis because Hubert Davis has been there much longer at UNC. Jon Scheyer hasn't been an assistant as long. And as you mentioned, pretty young guy. Like, that's kind of big news for him to take over a Duke basketball program at that age. But exciting to see him do that. We'll see how it turns out. If it's anywhere even close to what Coach K did, good for Duke.
Yeah, and that'll be an advantage for Jon Scheyer going forward. I'm sure that as Coach K is out on his recruiting trips, this isn't the sort of decision that you kind of make overnight. This is something that he probably has been peddling to these recruits is, hey, it's not just me. It's also, John Shire, who could very well end up being your coach during your time here. There's a pretty good chance that he was really smart with ensuring a nice lineage of succession so that we don't have a big exodus of Duke players leaving via transfer. So really smart move to go with somebody in-house as well.
Kind of like that Bob Stoops, Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma
Sure.
college football. It could be a similar transition as that. We'll certainly be watching. It'll be exciting to see. And I think for the recruits, just, I don't know about long term, but in the short term, it'd be kind of cool to be a part of Coach K's last season. And you can kind of get sort of that old school guy in Coach K, also sort of that young guy in John Shire. Maybe can relate to the recruits. So expecting a much better season for Duke this next season than this past season, I think for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the record, Shire's 33, so I was pretty close.
Right on.
But moving on to NFL, Julio Jones, he wants out of Atlanta. Where do we think would be the best fit for Julio?
First off, let's give some love to Julio Jones. 95.5 receiving yards per game. That's the best in NFL history. Calvin Johnson at 86.1. So in his career, granted, those numbers are going to slip a little bit as he gets older. 85.7 this last season, still pretty good. But Julio Jones, you can make a case for him being one of the all-time, greatest receivers of all time. A lot of interesting teams mentioned in the mix. Certainly, I've heard the Titans are in the mix. A.J. Brown recruiting him on TikTok. So 2021. I do think he might not end up there because the Titans are such a running team. The Patriots, Chargers, Colts also in the mix. I still think the Chargers still need to learn to win. The Patriots still got to sort out their QB situation. And the Colts, Carson Wentz is kind of a risk. At 32, Julio Jones probably has another 2 or 3 years in his prime. I mean, he might play a little longer. But for him, he wants to go to a team that he can win right away, a team that he can put up numbers right away. So for me, the perfect fit is one of Castleman's favorite teams, the Los Angeles Rams. I think they've got the best defense in the NFL. They got the quarterback in Matthew Stafford, and he's got the perfect sort of receiving core where they added Deshaun Jackson. They've got Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, respectable receivers where he's not necessarily going to be always double teamed, but also a place where he can be the top dog. He's used to getting tons of catches, tons of yards. I think he wants to be the top receiver, and that's a place where he can succeed personally, and he can play in the playoffs. I think the Rams, to me, are a pretty good fit for Julio. Sean McVay could all of a sudden have some fun going from Jared Goff and Robert Woods to Julio Jones and Matthew Stafford. The NFL thinks they figured him out the last couple of years. Well, they might have to figure out those two in the next couple of years.
See, that sounds like a great match made in fantasy Madden heaven type of thing, but I don't know how the Rams are going to do it. I don't know if they have a first round pick or second round pick over the next 50 years, not to mention the salary cap space. I think that'd be a great show to see. But in terms of, kind of like the more likely destinations that I think that he could end up that would be a good fit, I think Seattle with Russ Wilson would be a really fun place. Put him with Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and don't even think about lining up under center. Just throw the ball every time. I think a good fit if you want to put him in a situation that he can kind of help a young quarterback on the rise. Another one of my favorite teams, the Baltimore Ravens. He'd be a good fit there. They have a need at receiver. Lamar Jackson could definitely use, the best target that he has ever had. To give him a little bit, better chance of having some more completions. You can't have Hollywood Brown dropping the ball over the middle when he's uncovered. Julio Jones is not going to be doing that. So I think Seattle, Baltimore are two of the best fits for Julio Jones where they can make that trade. I think Indianapolis is a distant third for me. I'm not sure if Chris Ballard, the general manager there, is going to pull the trigger on doing such a deal. But I think that'd be a great fit for him as well. He'd slot right in with that offense and basically add a dimension that those two AFC teams don't have. And for the Seattle Seahawks, it's just the rich get richer.
I enjoyed this. Oh, go ahead, Common.
No, you go ahead, Drew.
I was just going to say I enjoyed this game of naming teams that Common doesn't like. where Julio Jones could end up. Give me the Ravens, give me the Cowboys. How about the Lions too? Just all the teams that Common has a beef with. So any one of those teams would be fantastic.
I think what it's going to come down to is what does Julio Jones want? Does he want, like, what does he value the most? Does he value personal stats the most? Does he value winning? Does he value money? Or is it sort of a combination of everything? Because I think, like, teams like the Ravens, for example, like, he could probably win there, but I think that's a running offense. Same for the Titans. Those are teams that he wouldn't put up the same type of numbers. Even the Seahawks, I think as good as Julio Jones is right now, I think how well Metcalf is playing, Jones would probably be a number 2, and it might even be like a sort of tied number 2 option with Tyler Lockett. I think Seattle would be exciting and be happy for them. That would probably keep Russell Wilson there, get him those wealth of targets. But I just have a feeling that he's going to want to be in a situation where he can still get some of his statistics, because Julio's been the number 1 guy for so many years. Like Seattle, to me, where he comes in and he's like a number 2 or number 3, or Baltimore, where all of a sudden, like, he's sitting there, like, basically having to block for Lamar Jackson. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know. We're just picking things, but in my mind, I think he's going to want to go to a situation where he can win, where he can have a good quarterback, and where he can put up numbers. But I have not sort of looked into all the teams' contract situations. That's for Contract Castleman to do. But one thing that I do think is going to happen, I think he's probably going to be gone because when a guy wants to get traded these days, he ends up getting traded. And I do know he's a little bit older. Atlanta certainly isn't going anywhere at the moment, so it wouldn't be the worst thing for them to trade him. So we'll see what happens.
Do you guys want the Vegas odds on it?
What are the odds? I looked up the original odds. Those teams I mentioned were among the favored. I don't know what the updated are.
So currently at plus 300, the best odds to get Julio Jones are the Tennessee Titans, comment which you said, and then the Seattle Seahawks, which I'm brought up. And then I believe actually Atlanta is in third at plus 400. And then we also have Washington football team we didn't mention. San Francisco 49ers are in there as well. Even the Las Vegas Raiders or Green Bay Packers. How about that? A team, with 2 teams with disgruntled stars. I bet a lot could be done if Green Bay traded for Julio Jones to give Aaron Rodgers a little bit more help. We didn't mention them.
Not. I hope not, as a Bears fan. And I watched NFL Live briefly the other day, and they were talking about actually Julio Jones and Rodgers teaming up, maybe somewhere else too, if they both want to go somewhere else, sort of like how we see the NBA guys say, let's pick a destination, let's go there. So Rodgers and Jones, whether in Green Bay or elsewhere, would be entertaining. By the way, Tom, I'll have more talk about the Cubs game I went to yesterday later in the show, statement of the week time. But outside the Cubs game, they were selling shirts. After the game, everything is free. I got my $10 Justin Fields t-shirt. It's not a jersey, but it's a t-shirt that has Fields number 1 in the back. So looking forward to Bears season. So hopefully for the Bears' sake, Julio to Green Bay does not happen.
Well, speaking of the Cubs game, we'll go to the Diamond here as who's up? Let's see here. Shohei Ohtani. Shohei, I don't know even know how to say his name. But Mr. Ohtani is having a heck of a season for the Angels, hitting, pitching. Really haven't seen something like this since Babe Ruth. Common, he's the leading AL MVP candidate. What do you think of him?
He might be the leading AL MVP candidate. He's one of 2. The AL MVP race is really interesting because you look at the 2 most deserving guys. Neither currently on a playoff team. I think we haven't really talked about him on the show, so I really wanted to talk about what he's doing. 3rd in the American League with 15 home runs, just 2 off the lead from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Also has a 2.72 ERA, which is 6th in the American League. He only has 7 starts. Some of those other guys have 11 or 12. So I think he's just outside the qualifications if you look at like ESPN or MLB. But I mean, it's crazy because this guy is probably a top 5 hitter and a top 5 pitcher in the American League. He doesn't have the wins because he plays on a bad team. They don't have the wins. Mike Trout is out right now also, but certainly without Trout, they'd be nowhere without Ohtani. I do think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is worth the mention too, though, because this guy is first in batting average and home runs, second in RBI in the American League. So we have some baseball players really doing really big things in the American League. Could have a historic season, could have a triple crown, and could have a guy, go under 3 ERA and hit over 30 homers, which is just incredible because those guys are playing at the highest level. So to have the hand-eye coordination to hit 450-foot bombs and also just the strikeouts he gets, the off-speed pitches, the fastball, he throws 100, he hits it 500 feet away. So what this guy is doing is truly incredible. And he's been hurt with injuries the last few years. So good to finally see him sort of settle in and kind of do what some people expected from him.
Yeah, I'd say that, we should kind of, I know that we're calling Shohei Ohtani like the modern Babe Ruth type of thing, but I don't know if Babe Ruth is ever as good a pitcher as Shohei Ohtani has been. And especially when you look at just like the pure difference in stuff. I mean, they weren't able to do things with the baseball that they're able to do now. Something else that we can talk about later in the show as well. I think that, as so long as Mike Trout is out, why not have his teammate Shohei Ohtani basically carrying this offense, carrying a pitching staff that isn't really all that great out in LA. I like Shohei Ohtani as an MVP candidate as well. It's really exciting to see, and it's a shame that they're on the West Coast and, there's not even more national attention put to it because they're not on the East Coast and they're playing too late for most people to watch.
Drew's in bed.
Drew's in bed by the time the Angels are taking the diamond. So anytime we can get highlights, that's the beauty of social media and Twitter is we can see all these great performances, especially by a player like Shohei Ohtani, who's doing something that we have never seen before.
And I watched him against the White Sox maybe a month ago or so, maybe 6 weeks ago. It was a while ago, but it was like the Sunday night baseball game. And that was one of those games where I did get to kind of watch him, like not in person, but on TV. And it was crazy because the first inning, he literally hit like a 450-foot home run. And then like he struck out the side. And it was just like, what a start to the game, sort of showcasing his talent. I mean, it is cool to see. And I think he's sort of a breath of fresh air for baseball because they're looking to grow the game, looking to get the young fans. Well, having a guy like that is exciting. It's only a shame that he plays on such a bad team beyond the fact that he plays so late at night. He probably isn't getting the love he deserves, and probably, that's unfair and probably not good for baseball because I think he's a guy that they could be capitalizing on him more than they have.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a joy to watch. I haven't watched much of him, but he's always, in the headlines for baseball. As you know, I don't even know how to say his name, for Pete's sake. Anyway, moving on, French Open, guys. It's up and running. Men's side, you have the regulars. Of course, Nadal's won, basically every French Open since the dawn of time. And then on the women's side, we've had some withdrawals. You had Naomi Osaka not play. Ash Barty just retired due to injury. So some of the favorites have retired. So, of course, you have Serena, but we'll get to the other picks later. Common, who do you think?
Hello?
Title.
Did you lose me or did I lose you?
I think we had Drew Blow for a second, but we're good. Who you have for the title?
Yeah.
No idea.
So let's take a look. Hold on. Did Ashley Barty withdraw? Oh my goodness,
she retired due to injury. Yeah, I just said that. She retired due to injury.
That was this morning, I think, right?
Oh, I don't know. I just saw it.
Oh my goodness.
That was his pick then.
I got to rethink my picks. That was my pick. That's crazy. That happened this morning, actually, because I was up late last night preparing for the show at, midnight, and I had Ashley Barty written down, and she had a game this morning, and I meant to check to see how she did, and Ashley Barty
not well.
So let me think about my women's pick. I'll rattle off the statistics for the men. I think it's a pretty obvious pick. It's one of those where If you pick Nadal and he happens to lose, you don't look dumb because he always wins. He's won 13 of the last 16 French Open titles, 4 in a row. One of those that he didn't win is because he was injured. So basically 13 of the last 15 he's played and he's won. He has 100 and wins and 2 losses at the French Open. I think that's 101 wins after his most recent one. He's the king of clay. He works hard. He runs every ball down. He's older at this point, but I think he still has the ability to play with the toughness and the physique that he's always played. For me, it's going to be bittersweet because if he does win, he'll have 21 majors, which he'll pass up Roger Federer, as you see. Probably my second favorite athlete of all time behind Lionel Messi over here. So Federer, by the way, also back at the French Open, won his opening round match. Exciting to see him playing. He might meet Novak Djokovic in the quarterfinals if things go well for him. And then Djokovic and Nadal would probably meet in the semis. So the bracket, I don't like how it's set up that, we wouldn't see a final between any of those guys. But Nadal is the favorite for sure. On the women's side, it's hard to say because originally I would have picked Simona Halep, who is a lot like Nadal. She's very good on the clay court, running around. You can hardly get the ball past her the same way with Nadal. Then I was going to pick Ashley Barty, and now she's out. Naomi Osaka is out. I think Kvitova, I'm not sure actually. One of the other main players also withdrew. So I'm going to have to go with Serena Williams all of a sudden. Maybe all of a sudden the lines are lining up for Serena Williams because I think she's got that one record away from breaking Margaret Court's record for most majors, singles majors by any player, male or female. So yeah, let's go with Serena Williams.
Yeah, she's kind of an easy cliche choice to pick, especially for somebody like me who doesn't pay all that much attention to tennis. She's certainly the oldest player, at the top of the field by a good margin. But at the age of 39, she's the 8th ranked player coming into this series. And then a couple of the top players have bowed out for a variety of injury and wellness reasons. I like Serena Williams as well. I think it's a great story for her to go out and win the tying title for most all time.
Yeah, I'm going to go with someone a little different. I don't even know how to say her name. She's Polish. So I may need some help with this Eastern European pronunciation.
Go ahead.
IGA is the first name. How would you say that?
Iga.
Iga? Okay, so Iga Swiatek. Swiatek. Swiatek.
I think I've heard of her.
Swiatek?
Yes, Swiatek.
Swiatek? Yeah, something like that. But she is Polish. She's the 8th seed.
You prepared for this one really well, Drew.
Oh, absolutely. As I always do. But she's Polish. She's 20 years old. She's got 2 singles titles this season, 19-5 on the year. So I'll take her to win the French Open.
Wouldn't that be something?
And then on the men's side, it's just Nadal.
I'm going Stefanos Tsitsipas on this one.
Your boy, of course.
Tsitsipas.
Yes, I'm going to adopt individual players in tennis now, as well as teams in North American sports. I'm going for individual players now as well.
Have you ever seen him play? Have you ever seen him play, Tom?
I had to go to YouTube to find out how to pronounce his name.
Oh my goodness!
Good for you for going to YouTube. I just go to Common.
YouTube might be slightly more reliable, but that depends on who you ask because we did have this debate on air. Mecole Hardman, it's Mecole Hardman, and a lot of people on YouTube, including Jim Nantz, call him Mecole.
Debatable.
And it's definitely Mecole Hardman. So depends where you look. But I think Serena Williams a little bit easier to say. And I guess it'd be cool. I think I would love to see Serena Williams and Roger Federer both get another major. And we saw this in golf, Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson winning in recent years. And it seems like every time you kind of count out Federer and Serena, they bounce back. And I think consistently they're older. And I know Federer might retire this year and Serena Williams might retire soon. But I can see them sort of turning back the clock. I don't think for Federer, the French Open probably isn't a tournament because it's only like his 3rd tournament back in the last 18 months. Wimbledon, U.S. Open are more for him. But the stars are sort of aligning for Serena Williams. The big issue with her and Federer, both in the last couple of years, is losing in the semis or the finals. They've made it deep into these tournaments, but when they get late, they haven't had as much gas in the tank. But if you're playing against weaker opponents, which Serena is probably going to be because of how this draw sets up, Serena Williams, sure. Let's go with it.
Moving on to soccer, Champions League final was last Saturday, I believe. Chelsea won 1-0 over Manchester City. Tom Castleman, the only one in this show who picked the winner. Common, you watched it. Tom and I probably didn't. So, Common, what you got on it?
Yeah, this was kind of, sadly, an underwhelming game. It was not a good final. Not a lot of excitement in that game. Not a lot of goal-scoring opportunities, especially the second half was very hard to watch. But Chelsea getting the late goal in the end of the first half to go up 1-0, and simply Man City, they only had one shot on goal. Their passing couldn't lead to anything. Pep Guardiola didn't start a holding midfielder without Fernandinho or Rodri. Didn't get a chance. Fernandinho's like their captain, a longtime Brazilian player. Was surprising not to see him in the final. Great story for Chelsea. 4th place in England. They win the Champions League. They beat Man City for the 3rd straight time. And really sad for Pep Guardiola, my favorite coach, Barcelona coach, a legend. It was tough to see. It was tough to see him losing. And he might have had some blame in it. With that said, his players were good enough to win, but they simply didn't show up. And yeah, I mean, it's been upset city in the this year. Upset in the Super Bowl, my team didn't win. Upset in the NCAA tournament championship, my team didn't win. Upset in the Champions League final, my team didn't win. As they say, it's sports. That's why they play the game. Man City was the best team throughout the year, but they couldn't deliver in that one game scenario.
Yeah, Castleman. Yeah, anything? Probably not. Or should we just move on to locks? Let's move on to locks. All right, Common, recap it.
I've overtaken Drew Brackett for first place on the show.
Are we actually tied?
No, I'm a game ahead now. But right, Tom, I think I'm a game ahead.
I believe so, yes.
Yep, Tom's got me at a game ahead. Percentage points. Real quick recap. Here, let me get my water here. I'm losing my voice. That's what happens when you're up so early in the morning. How about that?
Mine just gets deeper. Yeah, see, Tom's is deeper too.
So yeah, recap. Heat against the Bucks. I missed that game wrongly. That didn't go well. But Mavericks +6 against the Clippers. Mavericks won by 6. Lakers -1.5 over the Suns. Lakers winning 109-102. 2-1 week for me. 2-1 week for Tom. You got the Bucks over the Heat -5. They won by 34. White Sox -1.5 over the Cards. They won 4-1. CJ McCollum over 22.5 points. Only 21 points for CJ. Tom just can't seem to. He just misses these player props.
The Sharps are really good in Vegas on player props, I got to tell you.
Oh, my goodness. I think, Tom, over the last, month or so, you've been, so good with everything you've picked except for player props. If you only backed away from the player props, you might be having 3-0 weeks instead of 2-1 weeks. Drew Brackett, by the way, he had a few really, really bad beats this week. 2 really bad beats. One in particular, he doesn't even know what happened, but I'll let him know. First off, the one that he did get right, 1-2 week, Wednesday morning, J1 League Soccer, Constantino Saduro and Segan Tosu under 2.5 goals. As Drew would say, ain't nobody scoring. 0-0 game. As for the bad beat portion, we'll start with the light one. The light bad beat, Steve Johnson, Yuri Vesely over 21.5 games in tennis. First set goes 7-6, 13 games. He's well in position to win. And then the second set goes 6-2. So he had over 21.5 games. There were 21 games in that, missing it by just one game. But here's the real bad beat. Oh, this is one of the bad beats of the year. Saturday morning, K1, the Korean 1 League. Drew had KG United and Osan Hungu under 2.5 goals. 68 minutes in, it's 0-0. We finally get a goal in the 69th minute. 84th minute, still 1-0. Penalty to make it 1-1. And then we get all the way to the 91st minute in stoppage time. Another penalty. 2-1 win. 3 goals in the last 20 minutes of the game, 25 minutes there. And Drew gets the bad beat with his soccer unders.
Wow, that's incredible. Wow. Well, I guess I'll go first to go back to the well. We'll go back to the K2 League. Busan Ipark versus Gyeonggam. Under 2 goals in that contest. That's Saturday, K2 League again. And then move into the J2 League. We'll go Japanese Soccer League on Saturday. Yerevan's Hitaikosho Chu. No idea how to pronounce that. You'll find it common first. Jubilo Iwata, under 2.5 goals in that contest. And then Sunday, a Serie A Brazilian League. Cuiabá versus Fluminense. I don't know. Under 2.5 goals for that one.
Can't wait to follow those games.
Yeah, I look forward to being educated on the final scores of those games next time on the show.
You know what's incredible on ESPN Soccer? They have like all the main leagues, but once you get the K2 or like the second division leagues, those scores aren't as readily available, but they might be now because there's not as many soccer games going on. But I'll definitely find them somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. You'll have to go into the I don't want to say that. You'll just have to find them in the deep places on the internet.
Yeah. Tom, what do you have?
All right, so I'll start out with the NBA. I will go for game 1 with the Nets and the Bucks. Currently, the Nets -4 over Milwaukee. I'm going to take the Nets to cover that line. So, as Common, you mentioned with this series going back to the regular season, all the games have been decided by a single possession, but here's the rub. Milwaukee has never had to play the full power of Brooklyn's big three. So I think that there's going to be a little bit of value there. They're keeping betting close in Vegas because we just don't know how that's going to go. I think it's not going to go very well for Milwaukee. Give me the Nets to cover -4. I think I will go to baseball. We've got the Royals going up against the Twins today, actually hosting the Twins. Twins, just for whatever reason, have not been able to put it together this season. A team that I think we all had as a playoff contender with the wild card out of the Central, and they're currently in last place by double-digit games. I'll take Royals on the money line, -120. J.A. Happ for the Twins has had a horrendous year, and Chris Bubic, something like that, for the Royals. I got them on that money line. And I think I'll go with Garrett Cole and the Yankees against Ryan Yarbrough and the Tampa Bay Rays today to cover -1.5 runs at -105. Cole has a sub-2 ERA. Yarbrough is over 4. Yankees have won 2 so far against Tampa. I'll look for them to win by 2 runs or more today as well.
Tampa's due.
Yeah. For the record, I was actually considering the Yankees bet when I looked at my bets, but wasn't too sure because the juice for money line wasn't great. -1.5, I wasn't sure. I'll start with baseball since you brought up the baseball, and then I'll get into the NBA. But my baseball pick is I'm going to give you guys some good odds today. Get yourself some good money. And this was last night at 1 a.m., so you may want to check the updated odds. But on DraftKings as of like 1 a.m. last night, the Red Sox were +120 at the Astros. Jake Odorizzi is 0-2 with a 6.75 ERA for Houston. Martin Perez 3-2 with a 3.55 ERA for the Red Sox. Boston, has a slightly better record. I know it's a road game. I know they haven't been as good as they have been recently, but I think they've got the slightly better team, and they've got a way, way, way better pitching matchup. And the Astros have actually won the first 3 games in this series. As Drew would say, I think Boston is due for a win. I don't think Houston is that much better to sweep a 4-game series. So give me Boston plus 120 money line at the Astros. Then heading over to the NBA, I've got the Blazers -5 over the Nuggets tonight. 2 games Blazers won in this series were by 20 and 14. To me, these 2 teams are too close to each other for it to not go 7 games. Last time out, Michael Porter Jr. was 10 of 13 for Denver. Austin Rivers, again, 50% from 3. I don't know that those guys are going to have back-to-back amazing games. I think Dame Lillard gets some help tonight. I look for a big game from CJ McCollum. Blazers at home win by 6 or more. Extend the series, force a Game 7. And then speaking of forcing a Game 7, I like the Lakers -2 over the Suns. Last week, I think I picked the Lakers -2 over the Suns, and it worked out well. So let's go with it again. Anthony Davis may or may not play in this game. I'm guessing that he's going to go. We don't know what his health is going to be. But even if he doesn't play, or even if he plays and isn't good, I like LeBron James with his back against the wall. We talked about it earlier. His teams are 15-6 in Game 6 when he's played, 6-4 when his team is down 3-2. James's playoff teams have won 11 of the last 12 series that reached Game 6. He's just been phenomenal in those scenarios. He might be getting older. Tom might be right. But I just have a feeling that the young Suns team, Booker, Ayton, those guys haven't been there. Pressure cooker situation, must win for LA. I like the Lakers in this scenario to cover -2 in Game 6, force a Game 7, and win the Game 7 also. If you want bonus money, Lakers might be an underdog or at least like even money in that Game 7. So look for the Lakers to win Game 6 and 7 and make yourself some money.
I mean, you could probably do a little bit of a future if you wanted to have Lakers winning the series at plus money right now if you wanted.
That's a bonus pick. We won't count it on my record. But what is that line? It's got to be pretty good.
I think last I checked is like +2 something.
Yeah,
I think
that's good money right there. That's good money. Hop on wherever you make your bets and place that money right there.
If you feel like placing a wager on Anthony Davis's health, yeah, go for it.
Or LeBron James's greatness.
I think Davis's health is a bigger factor.
All right. Drew, and it's real quickly on the Lakers. It's interesting because they have such a team built around LeBron and Davis. They have a lot of solid players on their team, but they don't have a clear, like, other superstar. Their team is built to play with 2 superstars, and then the other guys get theirs. So their team really isn't built for 1 superstar. They're built for 2 superstars. They have a good roster constructed as is. If LeBron and Davis are healthy, all of a sudden one of them goes out and things look much, much worse. So they literally went from LeBron James's Cavaliers back in the day where he had Kyrie and Kevin Love. They look like a great team. 1 or 2 of those guys gets injured. It gets back to LeBron having to carry everyone. And I don't know that he's as equipped to do it as before. But given that he hasn't been at his best this whole series, I expect a couple of magical games from King James. We are witnesses.
Incredible. Wow. Well, I'll do a quick statement /salute/ what I do.
All right.
The Women's College World Series starts today, Thursday. Oklahoma State, James Madison, Georgia, UCLA, Alabama, Florida State, and Arizona all in it. So be sure to watch some fantastic college softball. And then the NCAA baseball regionals start. That'll start tomorrow on Friday. Plenty of teams in it. Should be some great baseball. You can find those games, on the family of ESPN networks. So definitely be sure to watch all that.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up question. Are these softball and baseball regionals, are you working them for your radio station and sports producing the broadcasts? And is that why I had to wake up this morning and record a 7 a.m. show? Are these regionals the reason behind it?
I mean, That's not the reason, but we do have plenty of schools represented. We have we have about 90% of the schools in the softball, and then baseball. Well, there are so many schools, but I would venture to say we have probably 70 to 80% of the schools represented.
Keeping Drew Brackett busy. The other note, very upsetting that it's James Madison, not Mizzou, in that College World Series. Mizzou getting upset big time against James Madison. Our Mizzou Tigers, Mizzou Tigering is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
When it gets to be the crunch time, they don't seem to deliver. They've got, like 2 national championships in the school history. Back in the 1950s, Norm Stewart, the legendary basketball coach, won as a baseball player, and they won a track and field title back then. So certainly since we've been alive, when the going gets tough, the Tigers have not been clutch.
All right, am I next up for statements of the week and whatnot?
Go ahead.
So first off, I am pulling up names here because I want to give a quick shout out, a quick salute to the Women's USA 3-on-3 basketball team. This, I believe, is the first year that 3-on-3 basketball is going to be a part of the Olympics, of the Summer Olympics. And I'm trying to find the roster here, and I'm coming up short with some slow internet because I wanted to shout out each individual player, but I'll do it collectively. Women's 3-on-3 making it to the Olympics in the inaugural event. The men's 3-on-3 team, who I also don't know the names for, fell short, not qualifying for the Olympics. As for statement of the week, baseball has a problem that they are not able to solve currently with rules changes, but they can with a little bit heavier rules enforcement. We've seen a little bit of players with their caps being taken out of the game. We've seen a couple baseballs tossed aside for inspection. I'm talking about illegal substances on a baseball. There are 2 schools of thought on this. One, it's actually good for pitchers to be able to use substances with a baseball because then they have better control of where it's going. As a hitter, that's a better mental state to be in if you know that the pitcher is going to be able to throw their best stuff over the plate as opposed to at your head or behind you. The other school of thought, though, is that this actually allows pitchers to be too good, as we're looking at pitchers who can throw harder than ever, and with the use of these substances, they can actually increase the spin rate on their pitches, giving breaking balls greater break closer to the plate. Pitchers are really, really well coached as far as tunneling their pitches. They're given a lot of great coaching, and with the advancement of technology and metrics, pitchers have an even greater advantage over hitters who have the toughest task in all of sports, hitting a round ball with a stick. I think that we're seeing this borne out in some of baseball statistics. Through May, the Major League batting average is .236, lowest since 1968. And look at an individual pitcher like Jacob deGrom. Through 10 straight pitches over 100 miles per hour, he has a .71 ERA, which is the lowest through May since 1964. I think we need to have tougher policing on illegal substances in the game. It helps with grip and break on pitches, but it also helps the pitcher then feel more confident they can throw even harder if they know that they don't have that same level of control with a sticky substance like a little bit of rosin and sunscreen on the hand, a little bit of pine tar on the cap or on the glove. They might actually have to scale it back a little bit and actually allow hitters to have a better chance of hitting the ball. Baseball's dead in the ball, so it's not as many home runs. That just means that there's more fly ball outs in the outfield this year. Not great look for offense, not a great look for their product. They need to liven the ball up a little more and make pitchers a little less effective through the means of illegal substances.
Yeah, I'd have to do the research on all the illegal substances, but definitely, and I'll have a story. So I was at the Cubs-Padres game yesterday for my girlfriend's mother's birthday. We had a great time, by the way. I'll have a fun story on that. But yeah, actually noticing in that game, the Padres and Cubs are 2 of the best teams in baseball, 2 teams who have, 2 of the better offensive teams. And granted, there were a few superstars sitting, some due to injury, some due to rest. You guys know how I feel about resting guys. Give me Cal Ripken Jr., Brett Favre, these old school guys that played every game. But I've already had that statement of the week. I was actually going to say that again, but it's like I've already done that. But I agree with you, Tom, because watching that game, looking at the scoreboard where they post the batting averages, there were quite a few guys below the Mendoza line, that 200 batting average. And there are a lot of home runs in the game. That's kind of how guys score now. But and I do like strikeouts, but it would be a little bit better to put the ball in play a little bit more often. So can't disagree with you there. My story behind the game, this is a funny story also leading into my statement. So by the way, knowing me, being a very friendly guy, I made a ton of friends at the game. Great time with this 8-year-old boy. He thought I was a genius because I told him Javier Baez either strikes out or hits a home run. And he had 3 strikeouts and he had a home run. So the kid's looking at me like, oh my God, you're right. You know what you're doing. So he was but other story aside, about the 8th inning, I'm going on a rant, talking to my girlfriend and her mother, just ranting about how I hate when sports fans leave a game early because you pay money for your tickets. And it reminds me of actually freshman year of college when I once went to a football game, Mizzou football game with Drew Brackett and his roommates, and they left the game early. So Drew Brackett's one of those guys, by the way. And I stayed alone and watched the end of the Mizzou football game completely alone. That was not the only time that happened that year.
Absolutely. I'll leave games early. You know, I used to leave Nuggets games early because it was bedtime. You know, I left Mizzou football games early. I don't know the reason there. I think I know the reason, but we'll keep it PG on this. I guess we'll not disclaim what I was going to do after the game. No, I think we probably wanted to go to Wendy's. I'll say that.
Yeah, you probably did want to go to Wendy's. You're a big Wendy's guy. But I'll tell you this. So I'm ranting about how sports are exciting. You never know what you're going to see. You never know what you're going to miss. And, going to these games is a lot of money, a lot of time. You got to get up early. You got to go deal with traffic or deal with trains. It's just a lot of work. And what's another 30 minutes? Another way to beat the traffic is simply to wait till after the game ends, take some photos on the field, celebrate the win, then go walk around the ballpark, and then traffic is a little bit worse. But anywho, I'm making this rant, and this guy in front of me, obviously hears me because my voice carries, as you guys know. Him and his wife, I think it was, get up and leave. He's like, oh, well, I'm leaving now. He looks at me. It was just so awkward, yet so funny as I'm going on this rant and this guy leaves early. To his credit, he was a season ticket holder, so he does get to more games than most people. So he could be a little bit more excused in the sense that it's not sort of like not once in a lifetime, but sort of an opportunity that he does get to do a lot. But that Cubs game, by the way, if you stayed for that game, you saw Higgins, their backup catcher, get his first career major league hit. That's always a neat story. Then you get to sing at the end of the game, "Go Cubs, go!" You get to celebrate, get your video, get your photos, the camaraderie at the ballpark, get to go pee at the end of the game in those stalls where there's nothing there. You don't even know what I'm talking about.
It's You'd have to go. It's not a.
Are you kidding? Yeah, the horse troughs. Yes, I've been to Wrigley. Goodness, I've probably been to Wrigley more than you, Common. Come on now.
But anywho,
absolutely,
it's all part of the game day experience. And I mean, the fans going on the field is another issue that we've had in basketball. Guys throwing stuff. Some person went on the field at the Cubs game, didn't like that either. That's its own problem. But to me, if you're a fan, if you support your team and you pay money, these tickets are not cheap. You pay money to go watch the team. Watch the whole game. Watch the whole game. It's worth it. You never know what you'll see. Put your money to good use. Also, I don't like getting in between innings for baseball or basketball. I go at halftime to get my food. If the vendors come by, I get a hot dog with ketchup, by the way. Always put ketchup on your hot dog, Chicagoans. You guys need to fix that. So I made sure to take a photo and put it out on social media, me eating my hot dog with ketchup on it. But yeah, enjoy the games. Be there, watch the game, be tuned in the game. You paid money for this. It's not worth it to leave early in the game to beat the traffic. I mean, are you going to the game to enjoy the game, or are you going to the game to leave so you beat the traffic? I mean, come on. Pathetic. Watch the whole game.
See, some people leave the game early to beat the traffic, and like a Mizzou game, we'll go to Wendy's. But on the way to Wendy's, we'll listen to Mike Kelly and listen to the Mizzou Tiger Radio Network, man.
Oh, I thought you were listening to KCOU 88.1 FM.
It depends on the game, but usually I'll take the tones of Mike Kelly.
Well, those might be a little bit better tones, but I mean, you guys, there's nothing like watching sports. Radio is great for sports talk. I think it has its own medium, but I would much rather watch a sports game than listen to a sports game any day of the week, and it's not even close. If you really like the radio guys, do what those guys do at the Cubs game. Put their headphones in, watch the game, and listen to the broadcast at the same time. Saw some of those guys at the Cubs game. But there's nothing like watching a sports game, much better than reading about it in the newspaper or, listening to it on the radio. Live sports and even sports on TV are special. I mean, that's what I love to do. That's what I love to watch. And if I pay, $60, $70 a ticket, I'll be staying for the whole game, no matter the sport.
I don't know. This might be a hot take topic for another time, but I kind of like listening to sports on the radio. There's nothing like a sports radio nap. Nothing like it at all. Before we close out the show, I did want to give the actual individual name shout outs for the women's 3x3 team. Stephanie Dolson, Alicia Gray, Kelsey Plum, and Katie Lou Samuelson. Congrats to them on the inaugural event. It's going to be fun to watch that in the Olympics. 3-on-3 is a really fun game to see.
Is that Samuelson might be that UConn girl, if I'm
Correct.
thinking off the top of my head.
It is. Kelsey Plum went to Washington.
That sounds like a pretty good team.
Mm-hmm. They're all current WNBA players, yeah.
Excellent.
The comment, Mr. No Radio, here's what you do. I mean, I know you love watching Mizzou on ESPNU at noon against Furman, with whoever's doing the ESPNU game for ESPN. No offense to that person, but I'd rather listen to Mike Kelly than that person for sure. So what you do is you watch the game on TV, and then you go to syncmygame.com and pull up the radio broadcast, and you can get it in sync with each other. That's what my company does.
Well, I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
Good. That's what you need to do.
Oftentimes, the radio broadcast team is better than, especially the team-specific radio broadcast team, is much better than an ESPNU broadcast that butchers the names. I'm just saying from the pure perspective of I like seeing what's going on. I'm a visual guy, and I would like to see what's going on as opposed to listen to it on the radio. And some sports are good to nap to. I mean, like baseball is a napping sport, Tom. You can nap while you watch it, and then you can still have it in the background and you hear the announcers. But I like what I pay for. I like watching my sports, and we'll certainly talk much more sports in the weeks to come. Looking forward to that. We're going to have some fun segments this summer, by the way. Tom Castleman's got some Olympic ideas. I don't know what they are, but I am beyond pumped to hear what Castleman has to say on the Olympics.
Just need a little bit of money for it. Just a little bit of money. A lot of bit of money.
Just a lot of money. I got to go take a nap, guys, since we recorded at 7 a.m. You guys are probably off to work. So everyone have a good day. I'll edit the show, put it online. Can't wait for everyone to listen. And hopefully everyone has a fantastic Thursday and a fantastic weekend. Have a good one.